So the Halloween Cup is back in Pokemon Go, running from October 15th to the 31st in GBL. If you're not too familiar with the Halloween Cup, it is a Great League limited format using Dark, Poison, Fairy, Bug, and Ghost type Pokemon. So of course in this limited format, when we have limited types, some Pokemon stand out more than others, and some spicy picks end up being more useful here than they are in the Open Great League meta. And to help you better understand all the changes that come with this, I have the Halloween Cup Meta Simplified here for you in this video to help you understand the meta better, build better teams, and win in GBL. Now, of course, link in the description to my article on GamePress, the Halloween Cup Meta Simplified, which covers all the information I'm going to cover in this video, and probably more information too. In the video, I don't want this to get too long, so I'm going to just go over the highlights for the most part and the basic stuff that you need to know. The article goes more in depth on the various picks of the Halloween Cup and goes over moveset information more. So of course, link in the description, make sure to check that out, article on GamePress. And without further ado, let's get into it. So longtime subscribers of SwagTips may recognize that this infographic looks a little bit similar to the Remix Cup Meta Simplified infographic, and I basically used the same template from that graphic for this graphic because it's roughly the same meta. The main focus of this meta compared to the Remix Cup is going to be on the poison types and the dark types. The poison types and the dark types generally have neutral matchups against each other, so there's no like arrow going between them. And then you have the types of Pokemon that do well against the poison types, and then you got the types that do well against the dark types. And then typically, you know, what beats dark is going to lose to the poison, and then what beats poison is going to lose to the dark type Pokemon. So we have a nice little circle of a meta going on here. To that end, basically any team that you were using in the Remix Cup will probably work out pretty well in the Halloween Cup. I mean, the name of the meta here is going to be Nidodark, you know, leading with Nidoqueen, backing up with two Dark-type Pokemon, leading with a Dark-type Pokemon, backing up with two Poison-type Pokemon. That's kind of the general gist of things. And then, of course, the other Pokemon, the other types, are kind of like that extra spice that can let you, you know, subvert expectations and pull ahead in the Halloween Cup meta. So starting out, let's talk about the king of the meta, or the queen, if you will, Nidoqueen. Yeah, Nidoqueen dominates in the Halloween Cup even harder than she does in the Remix Cup, and Nidoqueen was the #1 pick in the Remix Cup. So Nidoqueen's probably going to #1 even harder when it comes to the Halloween Cup meta here. Now, the best Nidoqueen is going to be the Shadow Nidoqueen, which can be unfortunate for some players because it's been over 4 months since we've had a Rocket Takeover event, so you may be without the Shadow Nidoqueen at this point, and you may be stuck with a Shadow Nidoqueen candidate that's already Frustration TM'd, but if you power it up, it's like 1470 or something disgusting like that. And the rule of thumb with that is while Shadow Nidoqueen is generally better than normal Nidoqueen, normal Nidoqueen's really good too. It's not that much farther behind the Shadow Nidoqueen. It's more tanky, so some matchups it can subvert expectations by being tankier than the Shadow Nidoqueen. So normal Nidoqueen is perfectly alright. It really doesn't hold you back at all or holds you back too much by going with the normal Nidoqueen, especially if the normal Nidoqueen has like a good stat product compared to like a trash IV Shadow Nidoqueen there. So that's just like my 2 cents on the Nidoqueen debate there. Don't feel too bad if you don't have a Shadow Nidoqueen built already. Then when it comes to the moveset of the Nidoqueens, you're obviously using Poison Jab with the Poison Fang. That's the bread and butter there. And typically you're going to want to go with Earth Power for that stab nuke damage that can take out opposing Poison-type Pokemon as well, especially the Nidoqueen Mirror. Earthquake is a consideration for the Open Great League because it can throw off a Galar Stunfisk that think they know what's going on until they're KO'd. But here, Earthquake doesn't really seem to be as useful. You definitely want to have that speed with Earth Power. Stone Edge is also something you can consider as well, which could just completely nuke like a Frostlass or a Alola Ninetales or like a Golbat or something, a Mandibuzz, that think they know what's going on, but then boom, you hit them with the Stone Edge. So that's also something spicy that you can think of as well. But if you do get caught against a poison type Pokemon or like an opposing Nidoqueen and you got Stone Edge, then you're probably going to be a bit of a clown. So you could spice it up with that, but typically you're going to want to go with the Earth power there. The next best poison after Nidoqueen is probably going to be Dragalge, and you're going to notice I put Dragalge in the dark type section here because it's like an anti-poison poison type Pokemon that functions a bit differently than the other poison types. I mean, the fairy types are pretty strong in this meta, and Dragalge loses to the fairy types for the most part rather than beats them. It does have Gunk Shot, so it's got that thing on it to maybe flip the matchup, but typically Dragalge doesn't want to fight these two Pokemon. And then Dragalge for the most part has a decent matchup against the ghost type Pokemon because you're using Dragon Tail damage. So I decided to put it in the dark type section here. But like I said earlier, Dragalge is the best anti-poison poison type Pokemon because it has the poison type resistance and it's hitting you constantly with neutral Dragon Tail damage. And it's got the early Aqua Tail, which is relatively unresisted in this meta. So Dragalge is kind of like a one-size-fits-all Pokemon. I mean, if Nidoqueen is the queen here, I'd say Dragalge is kind of the king of the meta in that respect. And then, of course, Dragalge does have a hard time against the Fairy-type Pokemon, but it carries Gunk Shot, so you do have the potential to flip those matchups by landing the Gunk Shot. And then, of course, if you think you can keep your Dragalge free of Fairy-type Pokemon, going with Outrage can help you defeat other Dragalges in the mirror matchup, and it can also, deal heavier damage quicker against more, it does more damage than Aqua Tail. So if you got it and they're there and they're not shielding it, then you're going to do big damage to them. It's just that the Gunk Shot is pretty useful for the fairy types. And then the third best poison type Pokemon that should be on your radar here is going to be Golbat. Now when it comes to Golbat, you do have the normal versus shadow debate once again, and I'd say in this meta, normal Golbat carries more advantages than Shadow Golbat has. Not that Shadow Golbat is bad, it's just that normal Golbat has enough bulk to tank a lot of super effective charge moves from its opponents, and then will also be able to reach like a charge move of its own to KO them back or at least hurt them before going down, whereas Shadow Golbat kind of needs a big energy lead to pull that off, so it's a little bit less consistent than the normal Golbat is. Of course, Shadow Golbat does have the heavier wing attack damage, so it's more aggressive in that respect, and it can carry some advantages that way, but for just like general purpose, I'd say normal Golbat is probably the preference here. One interesting thing that Shadow Golbat has going on for it that you can think about is if you use Shadow Golbat as a safe swap, or if it just has like an energy lead of any sort against Frostlass here, it can actually flip that matchup because it is doing that heavier wing attack damage, and it's not by landing the Shadow Ball. You want to throw that Poison Fang early and often so you can just wear it down with your wing attacks there. I climbed to Legend last season during the Remix Cup using Shadow Golbat as a safe swap for that exact purpose, and Frostlass is as good of a safe swap here as it is in the Remix Cup, so you definitely have that potential with Shadow Golbat here. So that is something to think about if you are thinking about the Shadow Golbat. Then when it comes to the Poison Sting poisons here, Drapion and the Quillfish, I don't think they're as good in this meta as they are in like Open Great League or in the Remix Cup, just because there's more things that resist them, more things that can kind of like shut them down in a way in this particular meta. So they're still good, like they're definitely not bad, and if your opponent's kind of like slow on the swap, then they can easily like turn an inch into a mile with their big energy gains. I just feel like they've got a lot less utility here than what they have going on in the Remix Cup. When it comes to like a poison safe swap that isn't Golbat, I guess, I'd probably prefer using Shadow Skuntank or the Muck, the Alolan Muck. I feel like they just do more like aggressive fast move and charge move damage, and given that their moves are relatively unresisted, or like I guess less resisted enough in this particular meta, I think they make the better safe swaps compared to the Poison Stingers, if that makes sense. So that's also something to think about. I could be completely wrong on that. I'm not as confident in that decision as I am in Nidoqueen, Golbat, and Dragalge here, so just take it for what it's worth in that respect. If you see your favorite streamer or YouTuber like clapping fools with either Poison Stinger as a safe swap, feel free to use that team. It's probably not a bad team. And then finally, when it comes to Toxicroak here, I don't think Toxicroak is all that great in the Halloween Cup meta. I think it's kind of like a weaker side grade to the Escavalier down here. I think Escavalier has a couple more advantages going on than Toxicroak does. Not that Toxicroak is bad, it does have the earlier ground type charge move, which can be very helpful against the poison type meta here. But for the most part, I think like it can get hung up on more things than what Escavalier can. And Escavalier does have that big drill run, and it's got the big Mega Horn as well to threaten like all sorts of dark type Pokemon. So I generally trust the Escavalier here a bit more than I do the Toxicroak. Then going down to the dark type Pokemon, I think Mandibuzz is kind of like the bread and butter big dark type Pokemon in this cup as well as it is in the Remix Cup, using the Air Slash moveset. With Air Slash, it can hit opposing dark type Pokemon for neutral, counter users, fighting type Pokemon, you can hit them for potentially super effective damage as well. So just a very useful Pokemon as far as its damage and, bulkiness is concerned. That said, it is a flying type Pokemon, so I don't know how much SmackDown Crustle is a meme or how much it is meta. Time will tell, because it can get hung up on stuff really poorly, but it can definitely rip things to shred with the SmackDown moveset. And SmackDown Crustle is good in this Halloween Cup meta here. So it is a little bit nerve-wracking for Mandibuzz, because if you got Mandibuzz on your team, then you might want to think about your other team members a little bit more and your Crustle vulnerability. Because if this thing shows up and gets to work on anything on your team, Mandibuzz is not going to be something that you're going to want to have to try to deal with it, because Crustle's just all rocks, man, and it's crazy. So that's one thing I will say about the Mandibuzz there. Then moving on to Umbreon here. Umbreon is the big bulky dark type Pokemon, of course, very good at that. It's got Last Resort, so it does the anti-dark job pretty well there, and it's got Foul Play. It also has Psychic as a new legacy move that you could have gotten from the Eevee Community Day 2.0, which spooks a lot of the poison type Pokemon, able to hit them for super effective damage, and that is pretty viable in this cup as well. So you could go with Psychic or Last Resort on your Umbreon, so if you only have one or the other, it's not that big of a deal. I'd say the preferred moveset is going to be the Last Resort though, just so you can hit more things for neutral. Foul Play hitting all the poison types, and then Last Resort hitting all the dark type Pokemon. An interesting consideration in this Halloween Cup though is going for the combo double legacy Umbreon using Last Resort with Psychic. I'd say that's a relatively sober decision in the Halloween Cup here, because like the only two kinds of Pokemon that are really shutting that down are going to be like the Bug Steels and Sableye over here. And if you're using your Umbreon as a safe swap, people aren't going to counter swap to the Sableye, and I don't know how common these Steel Bugs are going to be in this Halloween Cup meta. So if the double legacy Umbreon does appeal to you, then I'd say it's a pretty good consideration in this cup, because the moment your opponent sees that you're using Last Resort or Psychic, they're going to assume that you don't have the other charge move, so you can get the one over on them in that way. That said, there are still definite risks associated with double legacy Umbreon here. So if double legacy Umbreon didn't already appeal to you as an idea, it wasn't already something that you were thinking about maybe building, I wouldn't spend an elite charge TM on it, just because it might be a little bit spicy in this cup. But if you already like the idea of it, now's the time to use it. Then we have Sableye over here, the Ghost Dark type Pokemon. Sableye is a little bit weaker in this cup because of the big focus on Dark type Pokemon, but Sableye is part Ghost type, so it does have Poison type resistance, and it can manage the Poison type Pokemon better than the other Dark type Pokemon can, so there is a little bit of a risk-reward trade-off when it comes to Sableye there. And as someone that uses a big return Sableye, Sableye does have it rough against opposing Dark type Pokemon, but I feel like having the Purified Sableye with the return always keeps some skin in the game there, because you can just hit them with a big return, you'll at least do a big chunk of damage, and if you have a shield advantage on your opponent, you can still flip the matchup, even possibly against Umbreon as well, by landing multiple returns. So even though this guy is weaker against the other dark type Pokemon, it's not exactly out of the fight either. And another interesting thing to note as well, if you don't have a good IV Purified Sableye and you don't want to pull the XL trigger on that, but you already have a Power Gem Sableye already built up the non-purified Peasant Sableye, if you will. I'd say the Peasant Sableye doesn't feel as limited in this format as it does in other Great League formats, the Power Gem, because Mandibuzz is the preferred Dark-type Pokemon, and it is sub-flying type, so you get that super effective damage in there. And then there's also like the Golbat and other Pokemon that you can get super effective damage against. You know, who's this? Is that Alola Ninetales? Yeah, super effective damage there too. So Power Gem Sableye, I wouldn't say it's better than Return Sableye. If you already have Return Sableye built up, stick with that. But Power Gem Sableye, not as bad here as it is anywhere else. So not bad. Then last but not least, we have the Obstagoon here. Obstagoon being the anti-dark, dark-type Pokemon because it has counter damage. It also has the Gunk Shot as well, just like our friend Jagalgi. It has the Trash Can of Doom, so it can retaliate against Fairy-type Pokemon. So if you do get trapped by a Fairy-type, Obstagoon kind of has a little bit more going on than everything else as far as dark types are concerned. And then of course you're going to use the Night Slash, so you get that boost potential. Now Scrafty is also available in this meta as well, but I'm not too comfortable, I guess, with Scrafty compared to Obstagoon, because, you know, Azumarill is going to be here, and if you get trapped by Azumarill or Alola Ninetales, that's going to be pretty rough. So not having that Gunk Shot, I don't know, I'm not too pleased with that one. And then of course this guy does have bigger ghost type resistances as well, so if you do get pitted up against ghost type Pokemon, you know, they're going to have less outs against an Obstagoon as they would against a Scrafty, so that's also something to consider. But Scrafty isn't bad. Scrafty can be a really good closer, probably a better closer than Obstagoon is, as so long as you get the Fairy type out of the way, so that is a strength to Scrafty. So even though Scrafty didn't make the graphic, I'd say it's on relatively equal footing with the other Dark-type Pokemon. It just doesn't have that retaliation against the Fairies. Then when it comes to our two Fairy-type Pokemon, Azumarill seems like it's kind of limited in this format because of the focus on Poison-type Pokemon, but there's also a focus on Dark-type Pokemon as well. And you know what? Azumarill, it's got Ice Beam, it's got Hydro Pump, so if it does get stuck against a Poison-type Pokemon, if shields are down, yeah, Azumarill definitely has skin in the game in all of those matchups, so it's still as much of a beast here as it is ever, despite the focus on Poison-type Pokemon. I would say if you are looking at using Azumarill, I'd prefer using the Ice Beam Play Rough moveset. Play Rough just so you can dunk on the Dark types a little bit more quickly, and then Pokemon that are neutral to Play Rough, dunking on them a little bit more quickly. I don't feel like Hydro Pump has as much utility in this particular meta as it does in like the Open Great League. Not that Hydro Pump is bad, perfectly viable move. And then as far as Ice Beam is concerned, I'd say all Azumarill movesets for this particular meta are going to want to carry Ice Beam, just because you hit so many different things for super effective damage with Ice Beam. So it's just that earlier bait move for one, and in this particular meta, it's more ubiquitous than it is in the Open Great League metas. And then as far as Alola Ninetales is concerned, it kind of feels like a similar role as Frostlass, but like a little bit different in that respect. Here we're definitely using Powdered Snow, not Charm, because if you use Charm, then you're going to get obliterated by Poison-type Pokemon. But with the Powdered Snow, you reach those Ice-type charge moves very quickly, Ice-type damage being very strong in this meta, you know, as per Ice Beam Azumarill here. So definitely a very powerful, useful Pokemon. For the secondary charge move, I'd prefer using Dazzling Gleam in this meta, just for the bigger raw damage. Psyshock does have its uses, but for optimal use, it's mostly hitting Quillfish, and I'm not exactly sold on Quillfish being very good in this meta, so your opportunities to use Psyshock well compared to using Dazzling Gleam well, I think is a little bit more limited. So I'd probably stick with the Dazzling Gleam on the Alola Ninetales here. Then moving on to the Ghost-type Pokemon, we have Frostlass here. And Frostlass is as good of a safe swap as it is in the Remix Cup, as in it's the best safe swap likely for the most part in the Halloween Cup here, just because, you know, it gets that slight energy lead and a whole bunch of neutral matchups or losses become big wins for Frostlass just because it's reaching that big avalanche and those big shadow balls just so quickly that other Pokemon just can't keep up that well. Frostlass is a little bit more limited in the Halloween Cup compared to the Remix Cup because we do have Umbreon here, big ugly dark type Pokemon that it can't bully as well as the other dark type Pokemon. And then Azumarill is also here as well, so just it's a Pokemon that it can overcome but it's a lot more tricky to overcome Azumarill, especially if you don't have a big energy lead, because you need to land the Shadow Ball to KO, and if this thing has Play Rough, it's going to be pretty difficult to get there in time. So Frostlass does have some hangups in this meta, but overall Frostlass is still as powerful as ever. One interesting spice note is Crunch Frostlass. It sounds insane, but for the most part, Frostlass is using Avalanche to get the majority of its wins. And if you use Crunch, Crunch has a cheaper energy cost than Shadow Ball does. So that can allow you to maintain advantage against opposing Frostlasses, the counter Frostlass, if you will. And then your matchup against, Ghost type Pokemon, the stuff that you would hit with Crunch or Shadow Ball anyways, are relatively the same or same-ish. And then you do have that debuff chance as well. I don't know. If you're not too confident in my crazy spicy idea there, definitely stick with the Shadow Ball. But if you're playing throughout the Halloween Cup meta and you're like, I don't really use Shadow Ball that much, and it would be nice to be a little bit faster in the mirror, Crunch could be a solution. Another thing to note as well is if you are higher up in the rankings, your opponents know how long it takes for you to get the Shadow Ball versus, Avalanche, versus not getting the Shadow Ball. So if they count not Shadow Ball and you throw Crunch, then they might not shield, expecting it to be Avalanche, and then boom, it's Crunch. You just flip that matchup. So I don't know. I might be crazy here. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm absolutely insane. But I think Crunch Frostlass has a place in the Halloween Cup meta. Moving on to the next best ghost here, we have Alola Marowak. And Alola Marowak might seem like a little bit too neutral at first. It might seem like it's not doing a whole heck of a lot because, you got big avalanche damage to scare the dark type Pokemon. So that's like really cool. Big fire spin damage, it doesn't really feel as big. But I think Alola Marowak has a lot of merit in the Halloween Cup because Frostlass is still going to be everywhere. Alola Ninetales is going to be showing up now. And then we have a whole lot of steel bug type Pokemon that are optimal in this meta as well. And guess who rips right through them? Now you might consider, well, what about like Firefang Mawile? I think Firefang Mawile is kind of a joke. Like, it can work out, but I don't really see it working out in the Halloween Cup meta. But Alola Marowak here, I definitely do see working out. You can use either Shadow Bone or Shadow Ball. I mean, obviously, if you don't have Shadow Bone, then you're stuck with Shadow Ball. They're kind of on equal footing, but Shadow Bone is slightly better, so take it for what you will. One's a legacy move, one isn't. And then Bone Club, of course. And then Bone Club also is pretty decent too, because when it comes to the poison type Pokemon, especially Shadow Nidoqueen, yeah, those Bone Clubs do a lot of damage there. So I don't know. This guy feels a little bit more of like a higher skill ceiling to make work well. But I think it's very powerful in this cup. I mean, there's a reason why Alola Marowak is always banned in the Remix Cup, and it's because it's good. And I think it's got a lot of opportunities to shine in the Halloween Cup here. Then moving on to Jellicent here. I think Jellicent isn't really all that in this meta. I mean, it's not terrible. It does have that mystery box thing going on. Like, am I carrying Ice Beam? Am I using Shadow Ball? Am I using Bubble Beam? Am I Bubble? Am I Hex? It's an interesting, tricky ghost-type Pokemon to deal with, and it can handle a lot of Pokemon in this meta really well. Like, it does a good job of, like, shutting down stuff with Ice-type attacks. Azumarill doesn't enjoy fighting this thing. A lot of the Poison types don't really like fighting Jellicent, so Jellicent is definitely good, but I feel like I'd be reaching more towards the Frostlass than I would the Jellicent. But that could just be me. I don't have a lot of good experiences with using Jellicent in the Great League meta. It's just never been a Pokemon that's jived too well with me. So if you got a lot of faith in the Jellicent, it's probably good here, but I'm just not really feeling it. And then to close out the Ghost type section, we have Drifblim. And I feel like Drifblim's like the slow version of Frostlass. Obviously the benefits here are that you can wall fighting type Pokemon really well. Fire type damage sources don't completely melt you, so that's good. And you got that debuff potential as well. But I feel like Drifblim isn't as immediately threatening as Frostlass is. And, Drifblim does get hung up by basically all of the dark type Pokemon, where Frostlass can potentially overcome them with an energy lead, like a ever so slight energy lead, just because of how powerful Avalanche is. There is one important thing to consider though, and that is that Drifblim does have an event hat now. So if you do get the shiny event hat Drifblim, you gotta flex that on your opponents. And that flex alone makes you the real winner when it comes to the Halloween Cup. But yeah, overall, Drifloon's not bad. I just feel like it's a little bit too slow compared to Frostlass, and given how good Frostlass is in this limited format, it's kind of risky going with the Drifblim. And now bringing us down to the other options here, we have basically a whole bunch of Bug-type Pokemon. Yeah, first thing to talk about is Scizor, the Shadow Scizor specifically. I'm really into this thing, and I'm really hoping that we get a Rocket TM event before the Halloween Cup is over, because I don't have one of these Frustration TM'd yet. But I really like this Pokemon in the Halloween Cup meta because like the neutral bullet punch damage is pretty much unresisted for the most part. And then you also have Night Slash for the potential boost. And I think like that combination of things there can cause this Pokemon to snowball and rip through a lot of teams in ways that they're not expecting. But only the Shadow Scizor, because you need that boosted damage to begin with. So an interesting Spice pick, maybe, might be a little bit more meta than Spice. I can't use it. I really do want to use it. So if you got it, consider whipping it out in this cup here. For the secondary charge move, Iron Head or X-Scissor, toss a coin on that one or consider what matchups you're going to want one move over the other. Iron Head is the bigger nuke. X-Scissor comes sooner and can help you close out dark types even faster. So take it for what you will. Then we got Crustle to think about. And Crustle's kind of like the meme king here. I don't know. Is it a meme Spice Pokemon, or is it actually meta? Let me know in the comments what you think about Crustle. But yeah, Crustle here is using Smackdown. So it's laying the Smackdown on everything that's vulnerable to Rock-type attacks. You send this thing out against, the Frostlass save swap, the Golbat save swap, the Mandibuzz save swap, the Alolan Ninetales save swap, and they're going to have a miserable time. You're just going to farm them down, smack down, and then the next thing that comes in is going to have to eat your X-Scissors or your Rock Slides. So definitely a good option in that respect. However, Crustle can get hung up very easily against tons of different Pokemon, most notably the Nidoqueen here, who resists all of Crustle's moves. So there is like a risk-reward factor with the Crustle, and given that it is just using Smackdown damage in a meta where that might not be enough against a lot of different threats, it just feels a little bit too risky for me to want to field, but I do see the extreme power that it holds. So I guess we'll see in the coming days here just how crazy Crustle can be. Maybe it'll be crazier in the early meta where people are throwing out their Golbats and Frostlasses more willy-nilly. Crustle. It could be it. Or it could just be a goofy meme that works sometimes but not all the time. I guess time will tell. Then there's Galvantula, and I feel like Galvantula is kind of in a similar spot as Crustle is, where it's kind of this like meme Pokemon in this particular meta that might work out, but it might flop really hard at the same time too. It can prey upon Pokemon that are vulnerable to it, but if they aren't, like what are you going to do? Lunge into a Ghost-type Pokemon that resists you? Or like a Fairy-type Pokemon that resists you? Or a Poison-type Pokemon that resists you? So yeah, I don't know. It could work out really well. Obviously, it's a really good Pokemon. Banned in the Remix Cup. It's got that debuff potential. It's fast on the draw with the charge moves too. But it feels a little bit too flaky in the Halloween Cup for me. Like, I think I'd probably use Crustle before I'd field a Galvantula in the Halloween Cup. Then we got Wormadam, Trash Cloak, the steel type Wormadam here. And cool thing about Wormadam is it's got Confusion. I think there are other Pokemon with Confusion in this cup, or maybe they're all Wormadams and Venomoths. At any rate, with Confusion, it can take down basically all the only poison, the non-dark poison type Pokemon. It can take them out. It can also take out Dragalge, so it's pretty comfortable into Dragalge, and it's not Fairy-type Pokemon. It's pretty comfortable into the Fairy-type Pokemon as well. So just like an interesting, like, hey, here I am, I'm blasting you with Confusion. What are you going to do about it type Pokemon? And then if you are able to trap in a target opponent with your Confusion damage and you take them out, then when a Dark type comes in, resisting your Confusion damage, you got Bug Buzz, which is either neutral or super effective against them, and they don't want to get hit by Bug Buzz. Bug Buzz hurts. So I think this Pokemon is pretty good in that respect. Problem that it has is that if you get caught by a Dark-type Pokemon, your Confusion damage is doing like nothing to them. So it can be a little bit risky. I mean, that's why these guys are like other options. They're not in the main circle of the meta. They have their advantages, and they're really strong advantages. They're really appealing advantages, but then they also have their drawbacks. And yeah, Wormadam's drawback is Dark-type Pokemon. Another thing to consider with Wormadam too is the Bug Bite set. The Bug Bite set flips the Dark-type matchup. It obviously makes you worse against Poison types because they resist Bug Bite. But if you swap Wormadam into like a Poison type Pokemon, you know, they're going to probably assume that it's going to be a Confusion Wormadam, so they might instinctively swap to their Dark type Pokemon, and then they're like, oh shoot, that's Bug Bite, so that could be an interesting thing that could work out. It could also be something that blows up in your face, so I don't know. I prefer the Confusion Wormadam, but I do see the merits of the Bug Bite Wormadam. Then speaking about Bug Bite here, we got Fortress. I feel like Fortress does the Bug Bite job a little bit better than Wormadam does because it carries Earthquake. So the Poison type Pokemon that are going to resist you, or like the Ghost types or the Fairy types, all the things that resist Bug type damage, most of them don't appreciate Earthquake. And then you also got the Mirror Shot for the early charge move, debuff potential, shield bait. I feel like Fortress isn't going to work out so well as like a safe swap Pokemon or just like a general Pokemon to throw out there. I think Fortress works best if your opponent's like swap locked into a Pokemon that has like that Schniblet or red HP left, and you can just Bug Bite them down and get that ever so nice chunk of energy lead on the next thing that comes in. So you got more potential to land the Earthquake, or at the very least spam the Mirror Shots. And I think that's like the best way to use Fortress, kind of like as a closer. So yeah, something to think about with the Fortress. I'm not too comfortable with Fortress in this meta though, just because it has so many different Pokemon that can resist it and outpace it and just completely clown it. But Fortress definitely deserves respect. Then finally, we have Escavalier. And Escavalier is good. It's got counter damage, it's got the steel typing, so it resists the poison type damage, and then it can hit those poisons back with the Drill Run as well. Very powerful move. And then the Mega Horn keeps it strong even against Mandibuzz, a Pokemon that's going to be hitting for neutral with the counter damage. So I feel like it's a pretty solid like anti-counter Pokemon in that respect. It's pretty good. Problem that Escavalier has, though, is that, you know, Ghost-type Pokemon don't really fear it all that much, and I feel like they're going to be very present in this meta. And then Azumarill's also lurking around now, so that's going to be problematic for Escavalier. So I think overall, Escavalier might be a little bit too much on the weak side to work out really well, but it's not bad. It's not bad. So that's about all I got to say on the Halloween Cup meta here. If you got any questions on this content, of course, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. If you enjoyed this content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. And if you want more information on the Halloween Cup meta, link in the description, of course, to my article on GamePress, which covers more details than what were covered in this video in a text-based format, and talks about more Pokemon than what I talked about in this video as well. So you want more Halloween Cup info? Link in the description there. SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these patron supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. Another interesting thing about the article on GamePress is Lorma96 did the infographic for that one, and it is a little bit different than this one. It's a little bit more meta concentrated, if that makes sense to you. Kind of like a different perspective. So if you want a different perspective on the Halloween Cup meta, link in the description to that. And why didn't I feature it in this video? Well, at the time of recording the video, that infographic isn't finished yet. So, and that's also kind of why I slapped together my old Remix Cup graphic to make it work for Halloween Cup. Just kind of off on the timing there. But Lorma's infographic is definitely a lot more polished and more to the point when it comes to the meta. So definitely check that out.